First fight of the night, we got Jack Shore taking on Yousef Sala, and I feel like Yousef Sala should have this fight covered. Jack Shore, he hasn't been fighting the best recently. I don't really like him at 145 pounds. He was able to pick up that win over Makwan, but not really anything to write home about, and that's Shore's only win in over 2 years. Yousef, he's turned the corner performance-wise recently. He's dropped down in terms of competition level a little bit, but he's been looking impressive. He's been getting finishes. And unlike Jack Shore, who's coming off of a loss, he's entering this fight on a 5-fight winning streak, and he hasn't lost in over 3 years. So Zalal has all the momentum here. And stylistically, Jack Shore's a grappler. I feel like he was much more effective when he was the bigger fighter at 135. And he has decent boxing, uses that to get to the body locks, back you up near the cage. And if he can get top position in this fight or in most fights, he's going to be effective. I mean, the guy has good control, good back takes. But you saw in his last fight with Joe Anderson Brito, he got out-physicaled. He got out-physicaled even against a bigger 135er, Ricky Simone. And his last fight, he got his leg ate up with kicks. Eventually, there was a big gash that opened up, and the fight had to be stopped due to that. So I feel like potentially there could be some damage from that in this fight, but honestly, Shore did show some pretty good toughness to want to continue, and it didn't seem like the fight really should have been stopped, honestly. It was just a really gross-looking injury, but you do have to question this guy's confidence, man. He was 16-0. He was on a long win streak if you included his amateur career, even longer than 16 wins. I think it was approaching 30 or maybe even had surpassed 30 consecutive wins. And now he's coming in here being finished in 2 of his last 3 fights. So we don't know exactly where he's going to be at. But Yousef Sala, he's an evasive kickboxer. He's fast. He'll use a lot of lateral movement. He'll switch stances. And he tries to get fighters to chase him. He'll land these touching punches. And then when guys overextend, he's coming with big knees, elbows, trying to throw maybe a little bit harder with his hands. He has good calf kicks, and he's struggled in the UFC against patient strikers with straight punches, long reaches, and I don't think Shore really brings that style. And Zalal's upped his wrestling and grappling acumen. He's going to be the bigger, stronger clinch fighter, I believe. I think he's going to be able to win that battle, which is going to be, in my opinion, the basis for the whole fight. And Zalal's shown good body locks recently. His back takes, his rear naked chokes are what he's won his last 2 fights with. And he has been taken down and lost that way in a couple of fights, but I think he's evolved past that. But with Zalal, he can be low volume. He can kind of sometimes fight down to the level of his opponent, which is why his record in decisions is not good. And it isn't as if he has bad cardio or anything. So I just think it's more about putting a stamp on fights, in which recently he's been getting finishes and doing that more. I think in this one he's probably going to have to go the distance and win a decision. I don't see a submission being very likely. And I think that he's going to be able to use movement, leg kicks, maybe get a couple body locks or some cage control, get the job done that way. I don't really see him knocking out or submitting Shore. And I think this one's going to go the distance, and I'm going to go with Zalal here. And in this next fight, we got Jamie Lynn Horth taking on Ivana Petrovic. And Ivana, she's a grappler. Her stand-up is not very good. She doesn't really have a lot of finesse to her game. She has length, decent foot speed, but doesn't use feint. She'll kind of move forward, move backwards in straight lines. Her hands are sloppy, isn't very powerful. Her head kick is decent, and she'll use her stand-up kind of long enough to time body locks or work away into the clinch. If she has to take some shots, she will. And she has good cardio. Her clinch, her takedowns are all right. She did struggle to take down Luana Carolina, and she actually was the one who ended up being on her back more often than not in that fight. But her jiu-jitsu is good. And if you look at her Instagram, she has a lot of pictures in the gi. She looks very comfortable on top or bottom, and sometimes being on bottom in full guard can cost her if she can't find that sweep or get the submission. But she has a good triangle. She actually has a good armbar as well, and she'll attack the legs. And On top, her ground and pound is solid. She isn't super slick with her submission game or anything, but she can get chokes, and when fighters slow down, she can get a few finishes. She's had a couple fights where she was losing early and ended up clutching up the finish late, so she doesn't quit on herself either. And Jamie Lynn Horth, she's the Canadian fighter in this matchup. She's a good athlete. She's big for the division. She lost a split decision her last time out to Veronica Hardy, and that was the first loss of her career. And in this matchup, I do think she has the better striking. Her stand-up isn't elite either, but she throws harder kicks. She'll be a bit more active with her teeps and her head kicks. Seems like she has a little more power in her hands. And I expect this fight to devolve into more of a clinch battle, though. Horth isn't an elite distance control fighter or anything, and she enjoys to clinch as well. She has good strength and she has decent clinch work, but her grappling is inferior to Petrovic's, and I don't think she wants to be on the mat with her. Her cardio is on point, and I think that, she's not going to get tired. Like Petrovic has been able to outlast a few of her previous opponents. Horth has done the same thing, getting late round finishes. So both these girls are going to be there probably for 15 minutes. This fight is a pass to me. I mean, I think Horth should win, and I'm going to pick her to win a decision because she is the better athlete, better striker. I think she's more active, a little more physical, and there's just a little trepidation if she ends up on her back. But, I mean, I feel like Horth should get the job done here. She's at home in Canada, too. I'm just not sold on either fighter here. I feel like this is a low-level matchup, but for a prediction, I'm going to say Jamie Lynn Horth gets the victory. And in this next fight, we got another Canadian, Chad and Heler, taking on Cody Gibson. And Cody Gibson, the guy's a super vet at this point. Second stint with the UFC for him. He's 37 years old, and normally he would be significantly older than his opponent, but Chad and Heler is also 37, so these are two of the older 135 fighters in the division. And Gibson, he was with the UFC years ago. He got cut, he came back, but he was fighting really good competition even outside the UFC. He fought guys like Ray Borg and John Dodson outside of the UFC before coming back. And Chad and Heler, he really didn't have many hard fights before joining the organization in 2020-22, but he did have a win over Brady Heistand, and on the Contender Series, he beat Muin Gafarov. So those are two solid victories, and both fighters are in precarious positions currently, though, because they're both coming off of victories, but previous to that, they had lost 2 in a row. So they need to separate themselves from that, get some momentum, and the loser, being 37 years old with 3 losses in their last 4 fights, could be cut. So it's a big fight for both guys. Cody Gibson, pretty effective style. He's long for the division. You'll use that to throw kicks, walk fighters down. He stays at the end of range, and he wants to slip and rip, and that's pretty much his whole game. He puts the pressure on. He could switch stance. He fakes feints well. And when fighters throw, he's ready to slip and return with a 1-2, a body shot, a big uppercut. He moves his head off center line fairly effectively, especially when he's fresh, and he has quick hands. His most dangerous weapons are his knees. He has good timing with flying knees, step-in knees, and he'll at times also slip and shoot too, and he has a wrestling background, so early on he is effective with his wrestling. His size helps him out, and he's shown recently that his arm triangle is going to be what he's going to attack when he gets on top. He has 5 submissions, but 3 of his last 4 wins are arm triangles, so I mean that's shows that he's kind of bringing that into his game a little bit more recently. And his cardio is an issue. He looks like he's cutting a lot of weight. He's older, and he definitely slows down. When he gets tired, instead of slipping the punches like he would be earlier, he takes more damage, and he isn't fast enough to return with counters. He'll get sloppy. Instead of cutting the cage off, he'll follow guys, and he doesn't wrestle as much. So he definitely struggles a little bit when the fight gets outside of the first round. And he has been submitted via guillotine 3 times, and all of his submission losses happened after round 1. Most were in the 3rd round, so it just shows that when he gets fatigued, he'll make mistakes, and he will quit out there. But Chad and Heler, he's a well-rounded fighter. On the feet, he's evasive. He throws a lot of feints. He'll stay heavy on the calf kicks. He looks to counterpunch. He has good timing, and he'll land nice short hooks, overhands. He'll go to the body, and I think he should have the edge in terms of power. If these fighters just bang it out, I feel like Heler will be able to get the better of that most likely. But Heler is going to need to worry about deep, straight punches from Gibson. He needs to use footwork, low kicks, try to time some punches, but make sure to stay tight with the boxing and then make Gibson work in the wrestling department and just use a lot of movement and be evasive and try to get Gibson tired. But Heler is a black belt. His last fight, he had a lot of control time. He got some takedowns against Gregorio, but that was just a real low-level sloppy fight overall. I feel like Cody Gibson could probably hit takedowns on Heler, and the battle is just going to be if Heler can mitigate the damage and get back up to his feet and be able to kind of wear on Gibson after he used all that energy getting him down. And Heler in his fight with Jose Johnson, he did lose position several times and he got his back taken. So if Gibson gets the back and locks that body triangle, that could be the end of the round. That could be a submission win for Gibson. For Gibson. So Heler just needs to avoid that position. And Heler's gas tank to me is going to be one of his biggest weapons. And ultimately, I think both fighters have clear paths to victory here. For Cody Gibson, he needs to throw a lot of front kicks, knees up the middle, straight punches. I think early on he should be able to backhand Heler up, get his hands to raise, and then get in on the legs, get a couple takedowns, maybe try to get the back. And if he has his cardio on point, then he could potentially use that game plan over 3 rounds. But I just don't believe in that at this point in Gibson's career. And I feel like he's going to slow down if he comes with that game plan. But in Heler, he's going to need to be evasive. He needs to make Gibson miss, try to make him pay with counters, try to work the leg kicks. And if Gibson pressures and clinches in Heler, he needs to be ready to get his back off the cage, scramble back up off bottom. And if Heler, who has clinched takedowns in his own right, can get a couple himself, I think that could help him also. And I really don't have a great read on this fight. I think either fighter could win. Gibson, I think, is the slightly better fighter skill-wise, but it's close. And the way, Gibson fights, I just feel like he's going to slow down, and I'm going to slightly lean within Heler just to dog it out due to cardio. If he can be evasive enough, land some hard counter punches, avoid being on his back for long periods, I just see him winning a decision. And I wouldn't even be shocked if he got a guillotine finish late. But I'm going to go with the underdog here in Chad and Heler. And this next fight, we got an amazing matchup, in my opinion. Great fight. Cidi, 0-1 in the UFC so far, but I think the UFC sees potential in him because they're throwing him in there against a beast, Garrett Armfield. And Armfield is familiar with this position. He's already come into Canada, beating a hometown guy in Brad Katona. And I kind of expected the UFC to maybe give Cidi an easy win here because he is 0-1 and I think he has potential and there's not that many great Canadian fighters in the company right now. But they're throwing him a tough opponent. Armfield is 2-2 in the UFC and he's coming off a loss, so he isn't infallible, but he's proven he's pretty solid, he's dangerous, and he's definitely fought the better competition. But Cidi, he's a really entertaining guy. He's athletic, he's long, he's rangy, he likes to pressure, he has a good high guard, he's fast, he has pretty good feints, he'll feint his way into the jab or the 1-2s, he'll throw solid kicks, and in the pocket he's really good, he's fast, he's sharp, he'll land pull counters, he doesn't tend to throw many combinations, but in boxing range he lets it rip. At distance he's not a big combo puncher, but in the pocket he will let his hands go in combination. And Cidi will pick up the pace as fights go on, and he looks to back fighters up, cut them off with kicks, force exchanges. He has good elbows, good knees. And Ramon Tavares was able to hit angles, counter, and land a lot on Cidi. Cidi doesn't move his head, and it was just a war. I mean, Cidi got his nose busted early and took a ton of damage, but he kept in Tavares' face and gave a lot of damage as well. It was a close fight at the end of it, but the judges went for Tavares, and I feel like for career longevity, though, I mean, taking that many punches is not going to be something you want to do, especially versus a guy like Garrett Armfield, who hits like a truck, especially for 135. And Cidi, though, he will wilt opponents, and he has 6 finishes via knockout. He's finished 8 of his 10 wins. and he'll mix in some level changes. His wrestling looks to be okay, and I don't really think he's going to attempt to take down Armfield, though. He hasn't had his takedown defense tested all that much, so I really don't know what he's going to look like if he does get put on his back. But his grappling looks decent enough. And his opponent, Garrett Armfield, he has his style to give Cidi issues, in my opinion. But it's just going to come down to if Cidi breaks him. But Armfield is mobile. He has good boxing. On the feet, he's fast. He cuts angles well. He'll use feints. And he has fast hand. He's a clean jab. He'll throw nice combinations. Fast 1-2s, 3-2s. He rips the body with hooks. And also he has a nice uppercut. And he's good at jabbing the body a lot to open up his eventual shots to the head. And he keeps the volume high. He's accurate. In the pocket, he usually finishes combinations, and he's the last to land. He is a little bit hittable at times, and he does slow down a little bit. So Cidi's going to be trying to push the pace, put the damage on Armfield, and just make it a battle of attrition where he could show that he's the bigger dog in a dogfight. But Armfield is going to have to use his power to either get Cidi out of there early or control the fight with that. And Garrett Armfield is a good wrestler. He has solid takedown defense. He'll look for trips. On top, he has heavy top pressure. He can hold fighters down. A couple rear naked chokes. But his jiu-jitsu is a little weak. He's been submitted 3 times. And this fight, Cidi maybe could submit Armfield if Armfield is dropped or totally gasses. But I think it's more likely going to be a stand-up fight. And I think Armfield's a good fighter. He has solid power. And he just gasses, and Cidi's a dog. If Armfield drops or hurts Cidi early but can't finish him, I could see Cidi breaking Armfield late. But ultimately, I'm going to go with the Armfield via very close decision. I think either fighter has a decent chance to finish here, and I think it's going to be a violent fight. If Cidi finishes, I think it will be late. So if you like Cidi, I kind of would target that angle. But I think Armfield, if he doesn't get that knockout in the first round, which Cidi's an absolute dog, and I think he'll probably be able to survive. If Armfield does the damage early, he could get Cidi to respect him and kind of control that pace and win a decision. And I think he's going to take the first 2 rounds, maybe drop the third, and win 29-28. So I'm going to go with Garrett Armfield in this matchup. And for this next one, don't really got a ton to say about it. Not a fight I'm looking forward to. Alexander Romanov versus Rodrigo Nascimento. On the feed, I think Nascimento is the better striker. He isn't athletic, though. Romanov could maybe explode on him early and land something stupid and knock Nascimento out or drop him and then ground and pound him like a Superman punch or something crazy. But over time, Nascimento, he has good pressure. He keeps that guard high. He walks you down. He'll throw the leg kicks and tries to work 3-2s, 1-2s. Romanov's striking is just kind of sloppy. He tries to explode, use his kind of unorthodoxness and athleticism. And he just wants to maul you, man. I mean, the guy is good in a clinch. He could throw you, and that's where Rodrigo doesn't want to be. Rodrigo can give up clinch takedowns. I mean, we saw him get thrown by Derek Lewis. So if Derek Lewis could throw you in the clinch, you don't want to be there with Romanov, especially when they're both fresh. But Nascimento is a black belt. We saw when he got taken down, he was able to get back up pretty quickly. And I think he's only going to need to get back up 1 time, maybe 2 times, if he is taken down by Romanov to break Romanov. And if he can get on top of Romanov, we've seen Romanov is kind of a turtle on his back. He got dominated by Almeida, who is a beast, but the same thing happened when he fought Volkov, and it seems like when he gets taken down, he'll just give his back, and the fight typically ends quickly after that. And I just have a little bit more faith in Nascimento here. I think he probably is the better fighter, but Romanov, very volatile guy. If he gets on top, he could finish the fight, especially versus someone the level of Nascimento, and I just don't have a lot of trust in Nascimento. I don't think he's that athletic. I've seen him get hurt by really lower level opponents, so I'm not a big fan of him, but I think in this fight, I'm going to favor him to win here, and I'll say he wins second or third round finish. And in this next one, you got Charles Jourdain making his first fight and first drop down at 135 pounds, taking on Victor Henry, and kind of a do-or-die position for Jourdain. He's taken back-to-back losses, hasn't won in over a year. He's a fan favorite, but he can't afford many more losses, and obviously dropping down to 135, he's kind of trying to jumpstart his career, maybe find something different. And Victor Henry, he's older and someone I don't think UFC wants to push, so they keep giving him guys that they're hoping can pull the upset against Henry and get a victory over someone that people know that is good. But Henry's 37, 3-1-1 in the UFC, and he hasn't really fought too much since signing with them, but he hasn't lost since 2020-22. He's coming off a TKO win in April, and I think Henry's a tough opponent to contend with for most. I mean, he's a cool, calm, collected guy. He has great cardio. He's very good in the pocket. He slips and counters you well. He puts numbers together. He goes to the body. He's durable. He doesn't have great power, but it's good enough, and he has good grappling skill. He doesn't look to wrestle that much, but he has good takedown defense, good get-ups, and he can use submissions to reverse position. His cardio is elite. If you slow down, he's going to pick up the pace on you. He has 15 finishes. He's never been stopped, so his durability is really good, and he has good finishing ability himself. He's 9-6 in decisions. Most of his decision losses were a long time ago, but his loss to Rafael Sunsao, you saw him struggle with the movement and the takedowns, and fighters who have the cardio to move, use speed to cut angles, hit, not get hit, mix in some takedowns. That's the style that's going to give Henry issues. You can't stand in front of Henry and trade with him. And if you have a game plan to just go in there and specifically try to hold him down, that's probably not going to work either. But Charles Jourdain, he's going to need to use kicks. He's going to need to angle. He's going to have to use lateral footwork. And he does have solid movement and counters. He has good kicks. He has long-range weapons. I think he's going to try to land the check hooks and the big overhands or crosses. And he's pretty dynamic with his spins, with his knees. But he normally tends to get into fights and sit down and brawl. He likes to feel the pain, which I don't think is going to be smart in this fight. He had a pretty solid game plan versus Gene Silva in the first round. He did get knocked down, but overall he did land more in that round. He was angling, he was moving, he hit a couple takedowns. But I just don't know if Jourdain has the conditioning to do that for 3 rounds or the fight IQ. Jourdain is dangerous. Maybe his power is going to be a lot more pronounced at 135, and he's going to be able to hurt Henry a lot or knock him out. He also has a really good guillotine game. But I think if Henry can keep the pressure on Jourdain and make it a high-paced fight, I do think Jourdain will slow down. And I don't know mentally where Jourdain is at with 2 losses in a row, a knockout loss of Gene Silva. I think both these fighters have passed to victory here. Jourdain, footwork, angle, try to get a couple takedowns. For Henry, he has to pressure, cut the cage off, force exchanges, maybe even take a few heaters if he has to, but slow cook Jourdain. And Henry, I think, is going to be throwing more. He's going to be more composed. Round 1, it's dangerous, but Henry's never been stopped. And if he could start to pick up the pace after the first, I think he's going to take it. I feel he's the better grappler. I don't worry too much about him getting held down. I expect him to have this superior cardio and fight IQ, and that's why I'm picking him here. I think he can get a second or third round finish. I think he can win via decision too. And for Jourdain, he's going to have to put it all together, fight a perfect 15 minutes, which we haven't seen him do in the UFC. And realistically, being 2-6 in decisions, although Henry isn't great at 9-6, it's a hell of a lot better than 2-6. Henry has the momentum coming into this fight. The one thing I dislike for Henry is the age, and if you look at his UFC run, he has fought a lot of older opponents himself, but he did look decent versus Farid Basharat, who is a younger guy, and I just feel like he has enough juice to use his cardio, pressure, superior boxing, and grappling to win this fight, and I'm going to pick him, so I'm going with Victor Henry. And moving it along, we got Ariane Lipsky taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius in this next fight, and you look at Jasudavicius, she is the Canadian, and she has done well in these spots fighting in Canada. She is an intense grappler. She's big for the weight. She has good cardio. She has solid durability. But I'm not a fan of her striking. I mean, slow and plotty on the feet, a little robotic. She doesn't really use many feints. She doesn't have a lot of finesse. She relies on walking through punches, throwing long punches of her own, and she can land against fighters with subpar defense, and she seems to have decent pop. Her chin is good, but she's never faced a power hitter like Lipsky, and I think leg kicks if Lipsky can set them up, are going to be an issue for Juda Vicious. And Jasmine can't strike with Lipsky, I don't think. She has to close the distance, clinch, make it dirty and ugly if it's in the stand-up. She has decent body locks, but she just isn't that explosive. And Juda Vicious' takedown game, I think, is a little overrated. Her last fight, she was able to get a lot of control, but it was mostly due to Fatima Klein trying to wrestle Juda Vicious. And that's what Juda Vicious is really good at. She has excellent takedown defense. She is really good at reversing takedowns and getting on top. She pressures you, forces bad takedowns, and then uses that to get on top. And in top position, that's her world. She has great ground and pound. She pushes the pace. She wants to get to the back, flatten you out, try to finish you. And she was able to control a really good grappler in Fatima Klein. But Klein is a 115er, came in on short notice. I do think Lipsky is going to be harder to take down for sure. And Ariane Lipsky, super improved fighter. I think she's underrated. She dropped her last fight to Karine Silva, but I think Karine Silva is one of the dark horses in the division, and Lipsky looked okay in that match. And Lipsky's a power puncher. She has good footwork. She has a solid jab. Uses good feints, fast hands. When fighters close the gap, she'll throw counter hook combinations. And she lands clean. She throws heavy. I feel like she is going to be landing the calf kicks in this fight. She's a little hittable, but she has a solid chin, and I feel like she's going to be the meaner striker in this one, especially if Jasmine tries to turn up and force these brawls. I think she's not going to like what's coming back at her. And Lipsky has improved her takedown defense significantly. She has heavy hips, good balance. She does a good job of getting underhooks, disengaging. She's physically strong for the weight. She'll use some judo to reverse takedowns herself, and she usually just gets back up and doesn't stay on top. But her ground and pound isn't bad. She also got an armbar win over Casey O'Neill in her last victory. And her cardio is good also. If she does end up on bottom, she hasn't looked good in that position in a few fights. And that's why Juda Vicious, I think, is the big favorite and someone that people are seeing as a potential finishing upside with her. But Lipsky, in my opinion, showed improvements with her ability to get back up from bottom in her last fight. She was able to get up a couple times. And I think if Jasmine tries to take her down with clinch takedowns against the cage, I just think Lipsky is going to be a little bit too good at defending that. And honestly, I'm going to go with the underdog here. I think Lipsky can win this fight by being the better striker, landing hard punches, leg kicks, stuffing the takedowns. I think that her last loss has been a little bit overplayed here in this matchup after we've seen her beat multiple opponents kind of similar to Jasmine, like Melissa Gatto, like Casey O'Neill. I don't think Jasmine is an explosive wrestler like Karine Silva who should get a shoot on the legs, and I think that Lipsky is going to be able to show that her takedown defense, maybe it wasn't good enough to beat someone like Karine Silva, but it's going to be good enough to beat someone like Jasmine Juda Vicious, and I think she's going to have the number of Jasmine on the feet, and I'm going with Lipsky. And closing out the prelims, we got a fight between two ranked bantamweights, Pedro Munos and Amin Zahabi. Pedro Munos, he's trying to hang on to his ranking here and kind of prove he's still one of the best in the world. He's only managed to earn one win out of his last 6 fights, but he's been fighting pretty elite competition. His worst loss is to Kyler Phillips, who still is a pretty good fighter, and he got a decision win over Chris Gutierrez mixed in there, who people see as a great striker. He also had a very close fight with Chito Vera. His fight with Sean O'Malley was a no contest, so he's had some close calls, even though that 1-5 looks really bad. But his style has just kind of been found out a little bit. If you can fight smart, you can control the distance, use footwork, you can normally handle Pedro Munos, and the UFC has relegated him to gatekeeper. He has been used to promote other fighters, and in this fight, Munos has taken on arguably Canada's greatest hope of breaking into that upper echelon right now in Amin Zahabi. And Zahabi's won 4 fights in a row. He just took the O of Javid Basharat in a big upset in March. And Pedro Munos is far and away the biggest name that Amin's fought, and it's in Canada. That should definitely kind of signify to you who the UFC is promoting here. But Zahabi starts to go out there and deliver. And you look at Amin, the guy is a little bit older, and he has been in the UFC for a long time, but just wasn't the most active guy. So due to that, he's put himself in this position where even though he's on a win streak, he can't really afford a loss here. And this fight to me is going to be a close decision more than likely. Zahabi is one of the hardest fighters to hit in the division. He's awkward to fight, low volume counter striker with great defense. I feel like he has a similar style to Sean Strickland, modified Philly shell, awkward guard. He blocks, parries a lot of shots, solid distance control. He's patient. He has good kick checks as well. And if you get in a range on him, he's going to sit down on the left hook, the right hand, throw heat. He has power. And he isn't as fast as most of the fighters Munos has fought recently. And Zahabi has to be ready to defend the kicks in this fight because Munos will go shin to shin with the calf kicks and the leg kicks. And Zahabi just has to be ready to know that he's going to probably take some leg damage in this fight. I think the teeps to the body from Munos are going to be coming as well, so Zahabi's going to have to deal with that. But he did a good job of checking, parrying a lot of Boshrot's kicks, and I think he has to be very confident at this moment. I expect him not get hit much to the head. Munos just winds up too much. I think he's going to be missing a lot. I don't see him landing very many punches, and if Munos can slow Aimon down with the aforementioned teeps to the body with the leg kicks and get Aimon to stand in the pocket more with him, then maybe that's where Pedro could start to find those punches and maybe get the knockout. But I think that Zahabi's movement, being evasive, is going to be tough for Pedro to deal with. And I think he's going to be able to land counters. He's going to make Pedro miss big. And I just feel like Pedro's not going to be able to get takedowns. And I kind of got Aimon in this one. Even though he's the slight underdog, I just feel like he's going to get this victory here. He has the momentum. I think that he's going to use his defense to create offense and kind of just out-finesse Pedro Munos out there. And just before we get the main card started off, hit the like button on this video, guys. Put a comment down below about what you think about my predictions so far. I got a lot of underdogs winning on this fight card. I know there's a lot of close lines, but I'm actually fairly confident in almost all my reads on these matchups this week. I like this week from a betting perspective, so patreon.com/MMA Prediction Guru for all the bets that I'm going to be putting on and some extra content. Check that out. But hit the like button real quick. Put a comment down below right before we get this main card started. First fight on the main card, we got Mike Molot and Trevin Giles. This is going to be the 13th UFC fight for Trevin. He's 7-6, and he's fought the cream of the crop, though. I mean, the guy's been in there with absolute beasts. I mean, recently the UFC's putting him in there with all the hype trains, man. I mean, he fought Dricus du Plessis in 2021 when Dricus was kind of fresh in the UFC. He fought Michael Morales in 2022. He fought Gabriel Bonfim in 2023. And then in February, earlier this year, he fought Carlos Prates. I mean, that's a murderer's row. And this fight's no different with Mike Molot. I don't think he's at the level of those guys, but he's another similar level and style of opponent where he's definitely who the UFC wants to come in here and get a big victory. But Giles has gotten some decent wins as well. I mean, the guy, even though it was back in the day, some of these wins has beaten Brennan Allen, Ryan Spann, James Krause, Roman DeLeeds. So style-wise, I mean, Giles, he's athletic, he's skillful, he's huge for 170. I mean, the guy's fought at 205 and 185 in the UFC, and he has good footwork, he's light, he's quick, he's sharp with his hands, his jab is arguably one of the best jabs in the division, and he's good at using his speed to stay at the end of range with his hands down, kind of bait fighters to throw at him, and then countering. He is a little one-dimensional. He doesn't kick much, and he doesn't go first much, but he was doing an excellent job versus Carlos Prates, who's really good at controlling distance. He was landing first. He was getting out of range. He was winning the large majority of that fight before he got caught and knocked out. And Giles' chin is a problem. I think he's not that durable, and when he gets tired and a little easier to hit, you can hurt him. And he isn't someone with huge power, so due to that, he can be low volume, and he doesn't have a ton of finishes in the UFC. And his wrestling is pretty solid, good takedown defense. He'll get body locks, doubles, but he hasn't been that effective or active with his wrestling in recent years. But he's still been proven fairly difficult to take down. In Mike Molot's grappling match with Trevin Giles, you saw Giles was the bigger guy, the better wrestler. He was able to get on top of Molot a couple of times, but Molot kind of had all the threatening moments. He was able to scramble and get the back at one point, and he won the decision. But it was a pretty even match as far as grappling went, with strikes and all the craziness of the moment, things could maybe play out differently. But Giles, he has been caught in guillotines 3 times, and a lot of times it's after he's gotten a little bit tired and sloppy. The last time versus Bonfim, I mean, it was just a really quick submission loss for him, but 5 submissions for Giles. He hasn't gotten one since 2016, though, and he has those submission losses. So I'd say the grappling for him is kind of his weak spot. His cardio is also not the greatest, and Mike Molot, on the feet, he has power. He's good in a brawl. He's good at kind of countering you with heat. His kicks are heavy, and I feel he's better at fighting against opponents who are aggressive and go first on him and kind of overextend and give him opportunities to land counters, whereas Trevin Giles, he normally doesn't do that. But Mike Molot does a good job of darting in and out with these power shots. He can club and sub guys, and if you stand in front of him, he's dangerous. But if he's forced to go backwards, his footwork isn't that good, especially when you back him up but you stay at the end of the range and you kind of try to force him to close the distance on you. It could be kind of clunky from him. And he holds his hands low. He doesn't have great head movement, but his kicks are on point. I think his leg kicks, his front kicks are going to be something that he really uses in this fight. And then he's going to be trying to get Giles to get out of position where he can counterpunch him. And then obviously I think he's going to try to time body locks, maybe try to find the neck. But the line's off to me. I just don't know how Molot could be that big of a favorite, because I feel like on the feet it should be fairly competitive, even though Molot could just catch Giles and knock him out at any time, and that's what makes me not want to play Giles. If he doesn't, I think Giles probably will be winning the majority of the exchanges and the moments on the feet. And as far as the grappling goes, we all already saw that it's fairly competitive, but I just feel like Giles, he's a ball dropper, man. I think that he's just one of these guys where he's going to be winning the fight, like always, and then get clipped and hurt and get finished. Or maybe Molot will just be able to get him out of there early, nice and quick. But this would be a fight that I wouldn't really want to target, because I do feel like Giles could be kind of a guy that screws a lot of people over this week. But I don't want anything to do with him either. So to me, this is a pass, but I'm going to predict Mike Molot gets a finish here and wins via guillotine. And I'm going to fly through this prediction because I don't really like this fight. Don't really care about it from a betting perspective. I just don't think either guy is very good. I feel like Stoltzfus is the better fighter. If I could trust his gas tank and cardio to go out there and wrestle for 3 rounds, I would pick him, but I think he's probably going to gas like he did against Bruno Ferreira, like he did against Gerald Mearshart, like he's done in other fights. And Marc-Andre, for all his flaws, the guy does have a gas tank and he will fight hard. He'll clinch you up and probably on their feet, maybe slightly better. But, man, I just don't like this fight. I don't like this matchup. And I want people down in the comments to tell me who they think is going to win this one, because this is my least confident prediction on the card, most likely. Or actually, it is. And I don't know. I'm going to go with Marc-Andre, but I just don't want anything to do with this fight. And in this next fight, we got a light heavyweight fight between Brenton Ribeiro and Kyle Machado. Machado is making the drop down to 205 after kind of being a sloppy heavyweight his whole career, so we'll see how that goes. But 2 guys that are 0-2 in the UFC, they both need wins. Brenton Ribeiro, he's a tall, long, and lanky guy. He has hard kicks to all parts of the body, good counter crosses, and his length and combined with the speed power that he has does make him solid. And his offensive wrestling isn't bad. Kind of showed off improvements in that realm in his last fight. His wrestling defense is the biggest problem for him, on top of not being able to get back up when he's taken down. But he will attack guillotines, front chokes, and just try to stay long, throw those leg kicks and long punches on the feet. And Kyle Machado, pressure fighter, he has decent hand speed, leg kicks, 3-2s, counter overhand rights, but sloppy striking. He definitely slows down. He got dropped in his last fight and clearly outstruck, and did a little bit better versus Mick Parkin, but he got outstruck and gassed in that fight also. Maybe at 205 he's going to be in a little bit better shape, but one thing at heavyweight that stood out for him was his hand speed, which at 205, I don't think he's going to have an advantage there versus most. And Machado's grappling is decent. He's gotten takedown against low-level fighters. I don't really think that he's going to take down Ribeiro, but if he can get Ribeiro tired by pressuring him, maybe he could defend a bad takedown and get on top that way. But his control is all right. His cardio is not good, and I just don't know what it's going to be like at 205, kind of to be determined. But I just think Ribeiro is a better athlete. I think he should be able to land counters, leg kicks, maybe even knock Machado out. Ribeiro has the wrestling edge, I think, as well. The fight could be close on the feet. I think that Ribeiro is a little bit too low volume for my liking, but I just feel like he's better almost everywhere. He's more athletic, and I think he's going to win this fight. And up next, we got another one here that I don't really have a great read on who wins, but should be fun to watch. Derek Lewis, he's always entertaining. He's taking on a former Glory kickboxer in Denise. And, I mean, Denise, the guy has good counter punches. He'll try to catch you with counter 3-2s, 1-2s. He has good hand speed, and then he stays at the end of range, feinting, throwing leg kicks. So his style is going to be kind of difficult for Derek Lewis, especially early on when Lewis has to be the most worried about getting caught with counters as he's coming forward, and as Denise is going to be the most heavy with his leg kicks and just be throwing probably more than he is in the later rounds. So early on, Derek Lewis, I think, is going to be patient. I think he's going to kind of just stick around at the end of range, maybe eat a few leg kicks and try to eventually get his timing and then blitz in and catch Denise at some point and knock him out just with an opportunistic finish like we're gotten used to from Derek Lewis. And another area where I think Lewis could potentially have a big advantage if he can get there is if he can get top position. His last fight, we saw him get a takedown. We saw Denise do really good with the takedown defense versus Carl Williams, even though there wasn't many attempts. But he did get taken down versus Austin Lane. I just don't really trust Derek Lewis to go in there and wrestle, so he's probably not going to do that. But if he does get on top, I think he's going to have a great chance to finish. And this is Lewis's 30th UFC fight. He's facing a guy with only 8 fights, so that experience has to mean something at some point. Denise, I think if he wins, it's going to likely be a longer fight where he might even win a decision. But for Derek Lewis, I think it'll get extended too, because I think early on he's going to be patient, but he's going to play that veteran game. He's going to try to wait for his moment and see if he can catch Denise and knock him out. But if Denise can put that leg kick damage on him early and avoid that happening, then he's probably going to run out the clock and win a decision, or maybe get a tired Derek Lewis out of there late as Derek Lewis takes a little bit more risk. So as far as the fight goes, I don't really have a great read on it. I think that I'm going to go with Derek Lewis as my prediction. I was going to go with Denise. I'm literally switching my pick right now. Like I said, this one to me could go either way. But I kind of like the over a little bit more than a prediction on the fight. But I'm going to say Derek Lewis wins. And up next here, we got an awesome matchup. We got Rose Namajunas attempting to ascend to a second title in a second division. She's on a 2-fight win streak right now at flyweight. If she can go out here and beat Erin Blanchfield, I think she could start to make an argument that she should get a title shot or maybe a number 1 contenders fight. And Erin Blanchfield is coming off a loss to Manon Fiorot, and she took some time off after that loss. Hasn't fought in a while, but 25 years old. She's probably went back, tried to close some of those holes that were exposed versus Manon Fiorot, and maybe we're going to see a better version of Erin here. Erin Blanchfield, before that fight versus Manon Fiorot, was someone that everyone was kind of looking at as a potential future title challenger. And if she loses this one to Rose, I still think she'll be in that position, but it might take a little longer than people think. And for Rose, it's kind of her last opportunity. She's trying to push back another young up-and-comer. She just beat Tracy Cortez. She got the win over Amanda Hebos. And if she can beat Erin Blanchfield, I think she's going to be in a very good position. And stylistically, I mean, on the feet, I feel like Rose Namajunas is going to be way too slick, fast. Blanchfield, she has issues closing the distance versus fighters with good footwork, and Rose has some of the best footwork in the sport. Rose has power, accuracy, a really fast jab. So I think Blanchfield's going to have to respect the striking coming back at her. And obviously, we've seen Rose get head kick knockouts. We've seen her drop goes with hands. So there's going to be a lot of different weapons coming at Blanchfield. And Blanchfield's going to have to rely on pressuring Rose early, eating shots, hoping Rose wears down, and then trying to push her against the fence until she can get a takedown. And if she can get on top, I think she's going to have a big edge. We've seen Rose struggle a little bit off of her back in certain fights, but outside of that, I just don't know. I could see a scramble where Blanchfield maybe catches a choke, but on the feet, I think Rose clearly takes it. Rose, to me, is the better wrestler, and I just don't see her getting lazy or getting caught with something stupid unless we have one of those off-Rose performances. I think Munos is more skillful, and Blanchfield is just not the same level athlete. Although she's very tough, she has cardio, she can grapple, her wrestling isn't that good. She's only hit 1 out of her last 20 takedowns, and Rose is not easy to take down. She is usually able to have more control time than almost everyone she fights. If you look at it, she's only been out-controlled in a fight really against Carla all the way back in her debut. That's the only time we've ever seen her really get held down and controlled on the ground and lose a fight due to that. And, just having seen J.J. Aldridge fight Erin Blanchfield, I know that was a while ago. J.J. training with Rose. J.J. was dominating that fight before she just got caught in something silly. And I just feel like Rose is looking really sharp recently. She looked great versus Tracy. And with Blanchfield, I think her last, like I said, she's 1 for 20 in her last 20 takedowns. But I think if you look even further, she's only gotten more than 1 takedown in 1 or 2 of her UFC fights. And I just think Rose is better on the feet. I think she can actually time body locks and get takedowns, or at least maybe circle to the back and use that to set up a head kick or something. And I just think that with Blanchfield, she's going to be on issues on the feet. And if she can't get that takedown, which I just don't think she's going to be able to do, I think Rose is going to pick her apart and get this win. The fact this fight's 5 rounds gives Erin a little bit better chance, but Rose has been in, so many 5-round fights, probably so many in a row, that it's really not that big of a difference for her at all. And I just think Rose is going to be able to close the door on Erin at this moment, and Erin will be back, but I think Rose is not ready to kind of give up that dream of being a 2-division champion, and she's going to go through Erin Blanchfield again. And just before we break down this main event, hit the like button, guys. Put a comment down below. But Brandon Moreno versus Amir Albazi. We got the Assassin Baby back. He's taking on Albazi, and they're kind of settling unfinished business. These two were matched up against each other in February. Albazi suffered what to me sounds like a pretty severe injury. He had to pull out. And whenever you have neck surgery, that's very serious, and Albazi just had to do that. He had neck surgery, I believe, in February, coming back pretty quickly, and we haven't seen him since June of 2023. So in terms of everything with MMA, he hasn't been in there in a while, but coming back only 6-7 months after a neck injury is not good, especially a neck surgery to me. And I believe he had an ACL injury prior to that, so he's coming in here with some issues. And Brandon Moreno, he wanted to take some time off after his last fight. He was going to fight Albazi on that same date, but when Albazi pulled out, Brandon Royval stepped in and ended up beating Moreno by split decision. And the fight was in Mexico City. It was against a fighter that Moreno had already beaten before, and he just looked flat. And it was a good fight. He didn't look terrible, but he said that he had some motivation problems and needed some time off to kind of get that fire back. And hopefully 7 months was enough. And he has to win here. 3 losses in a row would not be good for him. But one thing that I do think that's positive is this fight, he finally has a fresh opponent. The last 7 times Moreno had to get ready for a fight, he was getting ready to fight someone that he had already faced before. So a fresh face maybe gives him that edge that he needs. And Amir Albazi is undefeated in the UFC. The one issue he's really had is inactivity. He's had more canceled fights than actual fights. He signed in the UFC in 2020. He's only had 5 fights in 4 years. 7 fights that he had canceled all weren't his fault, but 31 years old for flyweight. He has to stay healthy, active, and make the most of it right now. And he's a big flyweight. He tries to intimidate with the size, walk guys down, stay tight defensively, back him up towards the cage, and he doesn't tend to let a ton of offense off until he backs fighters up, and then he'll look to either land a pull counter strike or kind of just close the distance with a check hook and get in on the legs. But he stands very upright. He isn't afraid of being taken down, and that gives him the ability to move in and out of range quickly. And because of that, he'll try to land pull twos or pull check hooks, pull overhands. And he's good at eventually using those pull counters to set up the level changes, get in on the legs. And he'll also come up with uppercuts after failed takedowns, which he's gotten knockouts with. His leg kicks aren't bad, but he's low volume on the feet, and he doesn't shoot much unless you get static against the fence, so he doesn't have a high volume takedown game. If fighters throw combinations on him, that's when they can land. And Albazi, he is a great wrestler, and he has good back takes, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to control a guy like Moreno, who's a beast with his scrambling ability. He couldn't control Kai Kara, but Albazi has 8 submissions, 14 finishes, great cardio, and there's a big gulf in terms of high-level competition between him and Moreno, but it's now or never for Albazi. And Brandon Moreno, he's a great boxer. He has, one of, if not the best jab at 125 pounds, and the majority of his offense comes off the jab. You'll use the jab to get his range, and then he's very good at landing pull counter combinations. Good job catching fighters with counter check hooks or even elbows. And he isn't a super active kicker, but when he does land kicks, they're heavy. He cracked Kai Kara with a heavy body kick, knocked him out recently. And he can eat leg kicks because he stays heavy on his lead leg, but he's gotten decent at kind of pulling that leg back. And he's also taken a lot of damage throughout the years. He's been in wars. That's one thing that is to his detriment. But he is high volume. He's a demon on the feet when he's on. And I think he's going to have an advantage in the striking in this fight. He's improved his wrestling. I could see him mixing in a few takedowns on Albazi, who, like I said, does stand upright and hasn't really fought opponents, I believe, that have been wanting to test themselves with Albazi in the grappling, so they haven't even tried to take him down. Moreno, I could see him maybe timing a takedown, getting into the back, and demoralizing Albazi in a certain way by showing him that he can grapple with him. And even if Moreno does get taken down, which he probably will, his scrambling ability is top-notch. Even Alex Pantoja struggled to control Brandon Moreno from the back mount, and he might have the best back control in the sport, Pantoja. And Moreno has nasty ground and pound, good submissions when he can get on top. His cardio is elite. I still think he's one of, if not the best 125er in the world on any given night. And originally when I saw this matchup, I was slightly leaning with Albazi, but I think this is Moreno's fight after digging deeper. Albazi's not going to be able to keep up with the numbers that Moreno throws on the feet. I just don't think Moreno is going to let him back him up or hurt him with single strikes. And Moreno may get taken down a time or two, but I think he can even get his own takedowns, and I think he'll be able to get back up or scramble in a top position when he is taken down without taking too much damage or being controlled that long. And the one reservation for me with Moreno is the fact that he could be checked out, gotten paid, and kind of lacking a little motivation, but I think that that's kind of counteracted by the fact that Albazi's coming in off of a layoff. Albazi's coming in with a major neck surgery. Albazi's coming in with, I believe, a ACL injury as well, surgery that he had last year. So he just had a lot of time off. He hasn't been able to take advantage of his winning streak in the UFC, and I feel like Moreno, if he is still viable and the organization is going to come out here and be able to get this victory. So I'm going with the favorite. I'm going with the former champion, Brandon Moreno, to get the win in the main event. So there you have it, guys. Thanks for watching this full card breakdown and predictions video for UFC Edmonton. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned something. I had fun breaking this card down for you guys. Go to patreon.com/MMAPredictionGuru to get access to full card bets for this card. I got quite a few single bets already for this card. I'm going to be likely adding a few more props, maybe even a parlay or two. And there's other promotions on this week that I'm going to be giving breakdown and predictions for on the Patreon, as well as potential bets for those cards as well. And you're just going to be supporting the channel by going over there, keeping the channel going. So I really appreciate everyone that's over there currently. And besides that, man, as far as my parlay of the week, my most confident pick for the parlay of the week this week, I'll go with a parlay of Mike Molot and Yousef Sala, even though I don't really like that parlay, but I think there's a little bit more value in the dogs. As you saw, if you watched the breakdown video, I picked quite a few underdogs. So a little bit more value in those, I believe, but that would be the parlay of the week that I would give you if I was going to give you guys a parlay. And my most confident pick, I guess I would say, is Yousef Sala. So thanks for watching this video, guys. Appreciate everyone that sticks around and supports the channel. On Friday, I'm going to be doing another live stream. We're going to be doing it probably around 8, 9 p.m. Pacific time, breaking down this fight card more from a betting perspective, giving you guys some free bets. So come check that out, ask some questions. You'll be able to get some direct answers in real time off the live chat, and there'll be some other guests there with me that you can listen to their opinions as well. So would appreciate everyone that comes over and checks that out. Thanks everyone that watched this video. Stay locked into the channel, and I'm out. Peace.